Yeah, I just had a couple minutes, so I wanted to get into, I guess, part two of the ARFID journey that we're going through with my daughter Ida. Um, so this short bit will be more so about how we kind of came to realize that she had it, or get to a point where we were able to realize that something was actually going on. So I noticed around before the age of 3, I always called her my good eater because she was my second one. So compared to my first one, who just seemed to me to be very picky and just, which I guess I don't like to say it was my fault, but it was my fault because I hadn't had any other children and I didn't know anything about babies. So I probably didn't pick the best way to introduce food to her or just kind of give her those options. So this is my first one, so she was pretty picky. With my second one, which is Ida, she just ate anything I made. So if I'd made chili, she'd eat it, and there were no issues. Up until the age of 3, I started to notice that she would kind of only ask for Nutella toast. And at first I was like, okay, well, no big deal. And I remember thinking, wow, okay, she is asking for it all the time. And so I kind of didn't always just give it to her, but sometimes I gave it to her as a little treat and everything. And I went to a play group, and there was an ex midwife there who was telling me that when her son was little, all he wanted to eat was porridge. So she just said, fine, pick your battles in life, and if he wants porridge, just give him porridge. So she gave him porridge for lunch, breakfast, dinner, all that stuff. And so I kind of thought, okay, well, maybe it is just a phase that she's going to go through, and I could just give her Nutella toast. And I did actually read in this book because I was doing some looking around trying to figure out, like, okay, why isn't my kid really eating or a variety of things? And this doctor guy said that a child will never voluntarily starve themselves. So I was thinking, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't worry so much and just give her Nutella toast. But when it became an issue where it was all she would eat, that's all she ever asked for, and she would have emotional responses to me saying no about Nutella. So she would have like meltdowns and flip outs and everything. So it got to the point where I tried to say that they just didn't have it at the store. So it wasn't necessarily mean mom who's just not giving her Nutella. Um, so this kind of continued for a bit until I had her 4 year. It's before the school checkup when they're about 4. So they had me come in and they asked me if I had any concerns or anything, and I kind of brought it up. I said, I've just noticed that she only ever really wants to eat Nutella toast, and I have trouble getting her to eat anything else. And the woman, I said, is that a problem or is it just kind of normal? And the woman looked me dead in the face and said, well, that's your fault because as her mother, it's your job to be giving her a variety of foods. And if all she's having is Nutella toast as an option, that's your fault. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, you already feel a bunch of guilt from being a mom. And then all of a sudden you hear something that's going on that you're worried about. Oh, it's your fault. So that made me feel horrible, and I kind of felt insecure about mentioning it or talking to anybody else about it. Um, but it still wasn't getting any better. And so around the age of 4, still after the before school check, I kind of brought it up to the doctors. I said, she's not eating anything, and I'm really having a big problem. Like, she's just eliminating um, meals. Like, she would eat things like she could sit and eat an entire bag of chips, or she could eat a whole bag of lollies, which is another thing that we have her. She's just obsessed with lollies. But so those are things that she would eat. And so I took her to the doctors, and they kind of the same thing. Oh, she's just a picky eater, but we can do bloods if you want to, and we'll check her height and weight and everything. Checked her height and weight, kind of was on. She was in the 50th percentile, so they weren't really concerned. But then they checked her bloods, and nothing was wrong with her bloods, and so they just said, well, we could get you a dietitian if that's what you want and everything. And I said, well, yeah, I need something because I really just don't know what I can do. And so they reluctantly, begrudgingly, whatever, they put through a dietitian referral, and then that took months before they called me. And so when they did call me, I kind of explained to her, and it was a phone consult because it was around COVID. And she wasn't very friendly, and also did the same thing about the mum shaming. So saying, like, well, as her mother, it's your responsibility to give her options. And if you're not presenting the food to her, that's your fault. And I said, well, I am presenting the food to her. And I did have a lot of insecurities myself around food because financially we were in a hard position, and I was just doing the best that I could with all the food and the meals that I had, which my other daughter didn't have a problem. So, yeah, she wasn't very open or receptive to understanding that, okay, well, I've tried everything. I've tried, sit here until you're finished eating, or maybe there's nothing else for the night. We tried the hard stuff where it was just like, my husband's a bit more sit down and eat your food, where I was a bit more laid back, saying, just as long as you're sitting with us, that's fine. But yeah, so none of it worked. Even making, I had to make her separate meals, and even the separate meals I made, she wouldn't eat and everything. So yeah, so that's kind of how it started, and we would have issues with like if I would sit with her, like she would say to me, "Okay, well, can you sit with me and feed me?" Even though she wasn't, she's not a baby anymore. And so sometimes I would sit with her, and if it were a piece of minced meat or something, she would physically gag, like she couldn't take it, like she didn't like the texture or something, and she would dip it into water so that she could get the sauces or anything off of it, and then she would chew it, but then she would gag as she was trying to swallow. So it didn't seem to me like it was something that was just in my head, like, oh, she's just picky. It was, she couldn't stand smells, she couldn't stand textures, and she kind of had this thing around her safe foods, which I can do another something on safe foods because this is already becoming longer than I necessarily wanted it to be. But yeah, so that wasn't until like, and this continued, and I was getting to the point where I was crying, and I just didn't know what the heck was going on because she just wasn't eating. Like, I couldn't get her to eat. She would be distracted, or she just would have these crying fits, or she just have these massive flip outs so that she didn't have to eat. And then she was coming home with her lunchbox full at school and everything. And I would mention to the teachers, I would say, okay, well, I don't know what's going on with her, but she's just not eating. And they would say, oh, well, you need to be sending more food to school with her. And I would say, like, what do you mean? I'm sending her a full lunchbox, and she's coming home with a full lunchbox. How is it? I'm meant to send her more food? And so it turns out that she would get to school and she was hiding her food in her bag. And so the teacher's like, well, when I look, there's nothing in there. So, and then she's crying and saying she's starving. So we send her to the office to get toast and everything. And so you need to be sending her more food. And I had been explaining to them, like, she is hiding her food. Like, you need to, and yeah, so again, it was this whole situation. But jumped forward to, I have a thing called Family Start that comes to help. It's in New Zealand. We're very lucky with a lot of things, and she's a social worker that comes to help with ages 0 to 3. So she's around to help with like developmental stuff with my youngest, who just turned 11 months, and then the twins that are 2, which will be 3 soon. And I always mention these things to her, and I would cry to her and say, like, I'm worried, I don't know what's going on and everything. And she's the one who said, okay, we're going to make another doctor's appointment, and I'm going to go with you, and we are going to try to figure out what's going on. So we made a hip appointment, which is the health something nurse at the doctor's, which is free. And so they kind of were basing everything on on behavioral stuff and everything, and just didn't realize, okay, well, they said, well, maybe she's just making it up because she needs your attention because you have so many kids. Because again, mom shaming, you have so many kids, how are you spreading your attention to everybody and giving them everything that they need? um, and then doctors that just kind of weren't really interested in anything. And so eventually, there's a lot of other things going on, like her teacher, she's also, like I said, high functioning autism, waiting for diagnosis, all that stuff. So the doctor, I finally had a doctor who wanted to listen to me, and she took her height and weight and found out that she hadn't gained weight in almost a year. So obviously, even then, they had her bloods done, which was really traumatic for her, and her bloods were fine, but she hadn't gained any weight in a year, almost a year, and she dropped in the percentile from 50th percentile down to 10th percentile in the height and weight. So obviously, hello, something is going on, the fact that she's not eating food. So then they started to take it a bit more serious, and this doctor has just been amazing because they sent through a referral to pediatrics, and pediatrics said, oh, within a year, we'll give you an appointment. But, so, and other than that, the only treatment, because my mom had sent me an article about this thing called ARFID, and I brought it up to the doctors, and she said it sounded pretty much like what she has. And so that was when we kind of started focusing in on the fact that it could be this thing called ARFID. Um, but when she wrote to the pediatrics, they had mentioned that, okay, well, ARFID is something that's treated through therapy and a dietitian, and therapy isn't available through the public system. And we're in no financial position to be able to pay for all these therapists and do all that stuff and everything. So I was just like, I was so gutted, um, because I didn't know what we were going to do. But yeah, so it worked out because I got in touch with this support group who helps parents or caregivers of children with eating disorders up in Wellington. And she sent me a message about what to send to the doctor, what to ask her, and the process of what to do, like height, weight, bloods. There was a couple other things she asked me to have done, but so I went to the doctors with this list, and she went down the list and she did everything. And so that's when she realized, okay, well, there is a problem. And she did everything she could, even though they told her, okay, well, nobody will take you because it's not privately funded. She ended up finding this person through this thing called ICAMS, and it's mental health for children. And this woman who had a daughter who suffered from it herself, she specializes in eating disorders in children, and she took my daughter on. And then I got a dietitian, and together the two of them are working together. And this particular dietitian, she works at the hospital as well. And I told her my past experience, and she actually apologized to me because she said that it's something that could have and should have been picked up earlier, because they do have the tools and the knowledge to know that this kind of pattern could be something like ARFID. So she apologized, but now I'm in a good spot with her, treatment wise, which is obviously a really long journey because it's never just like, oh, that's it, you have somebody and you're cured. So we have weekly meetings with the ICAMS people, the mental health people, and we do weigh-ins and we do height checks every week. And we're also with a dietitian. So yeah, so that's how we got to the point of being able to be seen by somebody. So that was just what the point of this video is. Um, I'll do some other videos on the aspect of like what some of the treatment is and what we're going through and how she reacts and everything. And I do apologize it was a bit longer of a video, because I just kind of want to keep them short and watchable, because I know that sometimes people don't have time, and if you're just looking for information, it's a bit long. So yeah, so the future videos I'll try to keep shorter. So hopefully that gave you a bit of an idea of where it came from for me. I don't know if anything's similar to you or if you're noticing any of those similar things. But yep, okay, I'll try to post something a bit shorter, and yeah, talk to you soon.